Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining. We have a short presentation today, so we'll just get right into it. My name is Wendy Fox. I lead the marketing team here at Greenhouse Data. And we have three presenters today: Derek Adair, Senior Cloud Architect at Zerto; Nick Wynn, who works in the Cloud Services team at Zerto; and Stephen Dreher, who's the Senior Solutions Architect at Greenhouse Data. We're going to talk about IT resilience. We have just about 30 minutes. We will leave time for questions, so if you have any questions, please raise your hand in the GoToWebinar panel interface, or you can send it in the chat window, and I'll send you a chat so you can see how that works. And just in the interest of everyone's time, Nick, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Wendy.
We can see your screen. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Wendy. I'm here to talk to you today about IT resilience and how Greenhouse Data, leveraging Zerto as an enablement software, can protect your business at all costs, help you transform your business to producing more revenue, and allows you to focus on innovation. This is about the evolution of business continuity and disaster recovery into continuous availability. In order to achieve IT resilience, you need to have 24/7 availability. There is no tolerance for downtime, no tolerance for outage. We have to eliminate downtime and outage to allow you to protect your business and data. You have to mitigate the risk in order to deliver the best customer experience and protect your ground. Modernization is another requirement of IT resilience. You have to modernize from legacy systems and processes. Not only do you have to modernize your system and process, but also your people. You want to point your people to more business generating activity and not on maintaining your infrastructure and process. You want to leverage the expertise of what Greenhouse can provide so you can focus on purely just innovation. And certainly, you cannot fully achieve IT resilience unless you leverage the cloud and the benefits of what Greenhouse Data can provide. You want to leverage the cloud to your advantage and placing your applications and business services into the cloud. So with that, you have to look at what you are protecting and what you're protecting against. In the past, what was protected is what was mission critical. This is truly the back office stuff, the things the business couldn't live with if something happened. It tended to be a narrow amount of protection. Many key applications and key business services were left unprotected or minimally protected. That simply does not work in the world. Today, all applications and services are critical. It is what keeps your business running. The cornerstone of that is continuous availability. This is not about protecting what was deemed mission critical. It's about protecting everything that helps you deliver a brand new customer experience and allows you to focus on innovation. With that said, disruptions happen. It happens every day. There are good disruptions and there are bad disruptions. You must look at the unplanned disruptions. You have to look at how to become more efficient of reacting to the unplanned disruptions, or they will keep you up at night. These things are going to happen. If you react better on the unplanned side, this will help you be more proactive in planning for the planned outages. Because the planned outages and planned disruptions, if you do it right, you can disrupt it in a positive way. IT resilience is not just about disaster recovery. DR is just one small component in IT resilience. It's about the combined planned and unplanned outages and being reactive and proactive in an efficient manner. You must protect your business for all outcomes. Greenhouse Data provides a platform agnostic solution to help you achieve IT resilience. Greenhouse Data can provide continuous data replication. They have the ability to provide the best of breed continuous data replication with the tightest RPOs and RTOs in the industry. They give you confidence that if something happens, you could quickly recover. This is not about replicating and recovering your data. It's about protecting and recovering your business and key business services. we can achieve that with our application database consistency. If you ever get hit with ransomware, CryptoLocker, or some type of outage, we provide the tightest RPOs in recovery to help you recover your data and have the ability to get your application up and running faster. That is far more superior than leveraging backups. And then built into this is orchestration and automation. You can't modernize, you can't innovate unless you get better at orchestration and automation. We've taken the guesswork out, built in the product itself. So whether if you're going to the cloud or multiple clouds or moving workloads across clouds, we give you the orchestration and automation to make it happen faster and with minimal touch by your people. Because again, ultimately, what we want to do is point your staff to focus on other core business needs and help it run better and not having them maintain and manage the infrastructure and the process. That's a big shift. It's been talked about for many years in IT, and now that's possible. So in the end, collectively, we would provide the best protection on earth. We're built for any platform, Hyper-V, VMware, AWS, Azure, and now Derek will show you how very, very, very simple how simple the solution is.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. Derek, we can see your screen.
Excellent. It's great to be here, everyone. It's a pleasure to be working here with Greenhouse Data. I have been out to multiple of their locations and met everyone there, and they all have a deep care for their customers and a passion for DR, much like everyone at Zerto. So a very good partner. We're very pleased with the performance of what they do. Now let's talk about the performance of Zerto. We have here our GUI, which gives a few indicators right off the bat of the health of your environment, right? We have in the bottom left-hand corner, the site is okay. We have our VPG status, which I'll talk about in a moment. So we can tell you how many VPGs you have, how many VMs you have, how much data is protected, what your average RPO is, what your compression is. And this is all in the GUI. This is all information that's included. So we also have IOPS throughput and WAN traffic in terms of being able to take a look at this when you're at your site, seeing what's outgoing. So you have a very good indication of what's happening in your environment. So we're all about giving you actionable data. Greenhouse Data will be able to provide that to you as well. In terms of the architecture here, this is basically our Zerto Virtual Manager, which is a very lightweight install. And then once we have this Zerto Virtual Manager installed, we install our VRAs, which are the replication engines. There's one ZVM on each site. So you'll have one at your site. There'll be one at Greenhouse Data for you. And then we'll install these VRAs, which are deployed per hypervisor host. And that's basically going to provide you the same scalable architecture, no matter if the business is small with a few hosts or grows to hundreds of hosts. And these VRAs are handling the throttling, compression, and replication. So all the VM block level changes are captured and sent continuously to the recovery site with no impact to the protected VM. That's very important. We don't use snapshots. And then as far as the journal storage, we're only using about 10% of your total storage and only at the recovery side. So we're very minimalistic in terms of what we install in your environment, and we have zero impact on production. So that zero impact on production really needs to be driven home. In terms of how we perform this protection, we have the notion of virtual protection groups. So these are basically consistency groups. So if you're performing replication, you will put one VM in a VPG. We recommend that you put entire applications into a VPG. We can create boot order for them. It's more efficient when you're protecting an entire application consistently to be able to bring that all up together to those consistent points of time that I'll show you. So when we're creating a virtual protection group, it's a very simple process. We basically come in, we name the VPG, we give it a priority. So the priorities are low, medium, and high. Now, this is only going to take effect when there is bandwidth contention. So if there's no bandwidth contention in your pipe, everything's sunny, no problem. We're just going to give everything best effort. If there is bandwidth contention, then we have the ability to set it to high so that this gets more attention than anything else. So we choose our VMs that we want to protect. Very simple process. We are in lockstep with vCenter, with VCD, with Hyper-V, whatever the case may be for operating system. All this information is available here for you. We can define boot order. So if we want to bring up the database app before we want to bring up everything else to start serving it out to the web, a lot of customers are dealing with older hardware, and it takes a little bit of time to come up. So we can give you that boot delay, bring these up to consistent points of time each, and then also decide when they come up. So we simply click next here. We choose our recovery site. We'll have vSphere Site 2, which would be a greenhouse site here. And then we would choose our data store that we want to use for recovery. And then we have our journal history. Now, the journal is a very important concept for Zerto. It provides a front end for your data that you're able to go in and pull files, folders from. You can, of course, restore to very granular points in time. Approximately every 5 seconds, you'll have potentially thousands of checkpoints per VM that you can go back to that aren't, that is not taking up the space that you need for backup, and also gives you the granularity to be able to restore 5 seconds apart. Now, this becomes very important when you start talking about ransomware, and beyond DR for Zerto is threat mitigation with ransomware, and being able to go in the logs, find that specific point in time where you got hit, and be able to recover from just before that. Now, we've had customers with CSPs that have scheduled their Zerto protection and delayed it. And just last month, in fact, we had one that delayed it, and they got hit with ransomware the day before they were supposed to have Zerto. Now, a year ago, when you got hit with ransomware, that was, an admin could pull his credit card out and pay that ransom and, save his job. Well, now this 3.5 Bitcoin ransom that used to be $350 is now, with Bitcoin, I think it's hovering around $9,000. Anyways, it was $50,000 that they had to pay to get their data back. So using Zerto once in this case pays for itself. It's really a no-brainer in terms of how you want to protect your data, how you want to protect your data center, and the security that you get from this that goes all the way up to the CXO level. So very important to keep in mind how we do this and what the business value is of it. So we have a target RPO alert. So if we go over that target RPO, we can get an alert. We can go in, we can see if there's any issues and what we might be able to fix. We can use the metrics and the data points that we give in the GUI, oftentimes, to be able to troubleshoot. And then we can set a test reminder. So we're reminded of when we want to be able to perform those tests. We have WAN traffic compression. So of course, we're compressing the traffic before it hits the wire, which is really conservative with bandwidth. We also have some best practices around databases that can conserve up to 50% of the bandwidth that would be associated with those databases, not transferring over temporary files that aren't needed for restore. So that really gives us a tremendous advantage over other solutions. We can enable WAN traffic compression with other WAN traffic compression tools. So they will work in conjunction with each other. And then as far as the ability to override VPG level settings for multiple VMs, we can go in at the VM level and be able to edit specific journal data stores. So if you want to put it on faster disk, we can do that. If you want to put it on all flash for a specific VM that's giving you trouble, you don't have to break up the VPG. We can simply add more resources. So we're giving you a lot of flexibility and not making things difficult for you, which some other solutions may do. So once we've done that, we go through, we have our storage. We are thin provisioned by default on the recovery side. This is also that temp data feature I just mentioned for SQL, for Oracle databases, where we mark temp DB as a temp data disk, and then we only replicate what's on that disk at initial sync, and then we forget about it. So we don't need to be sending all those changes that are irrelevant over the wire, and we don't need to write those to disk. Very important business value for Zerto. Then we choose our networking. So we have our, basically what we're doing, on the back end here is we're building out, a couple of VLANs. We have our, VM network for, actual production failovers. And then we're creating a test VLAN for you as well, where you're able to basically spin things up in a test bubble. You can patch, you can run dev refresh. So we have a lot of customers that are using this to be able to give their DBAs the ability to work on the database without impact on production. You can also prove out. There's a lot of patches that have actually just come out today from Microsoft to do with the Spectre. So we then pick our recovery folder. And any pre or post recovery script. So we have white papers on this where we have scripts that are already pre-written that you can run both pre-recovery and post-recovery. Those will show up later on, and we'll see that in the GUI, as part of this. So here we choose our NICs. We can go in at a deeper level and choose, and then Offsite Backup is another potential solution as well. I'm not going to delve too deeply into that there, but needless to say, it is an Offsite Backup and basically a fully deduped clone. And then we have this information here, which is basically everything we just did. So we have these 4 VMs in the VPG. All this information is still available in the GUI, so you're not going to have to save this and file it away. You can go in and look at this information at any time and, of course, change it. That's how we create a VPG. That's how we create our protection. So again, we have our VPGs with the VPG name and the number of VMs inside. And then we have this notion of the direction of the replication. So we have the ability to create local replication. We also have a multi-cloud feature that will enable you to take one VM in 3 separate VPGs to 3 different locations. So a lot of capabilities in terms of really giving your data the resilience that it deserves in terms of its value to your business on an everyday basis. So with that, we can go and we can do a test failover. And down here, we can see we have live failover here where it's going to go red. It's going to let you know you're performing a critical task. But if you are just testing, click failover. And then we simply choose which VPGs we want to fail over. It's going to let us know what direction it's going. So this is all outbound replication to all these different sites. We can see that we're meeting our SLA. If there was any state that needed to be, we need to be informed of, it would be there. And then we select our execution parameters for each VPG. So here's where we get a look at our checkpoints. And this is, within the journal, this is our secret sauce that gives you, and if you look at those times, 5, 6 second checkpoints that are not snapshots. These are checkpoints that you're able to roll back to, in DVR-like style at all these different points. So you can see where the value of this comes in, specifically for ransomware, but, so many other use cases where that ability to go back at a specific point in time and not to 4 hours ago or 24 hours ago, or, get me the tape, whatever the case may be, we're able to restore these things so quickly and so efficiently and so painlessly that it really is changing people's minds about what DR is and how they can use Zerto to get a hold of the IT resilience that everyone's now talking about. It's, everyone's been talking about hybrid cloud for 6 years. We're here now. We are in the multi-cloud situation. We have so many options. We don't want to get locked in with storage arrays anymore. We have partners like Greenhouse Data that can guide us. They can show us what the best process is to be able to get into the cloud, to be able to maximize economies of scale with your DR, with your production, whatever the case may be. But back to the point here, we have 3,430 checkpoints that we could restore from. And these are on a per VM basis. So we can go into any of these and pick different checkpoints. Now you can see here we have boot order defined for these VPGs. And if we had any scripts, it would let us know there. And that is it. It's basically 4 clicks to be able to start this failover test. And once we start this failover test, essentially what's happening is we have the recovery disks on the recovery side. We have our journal on the recovery side. So if that, God forbid, Site 1 is completely out of service for whatever reason, be it, user error, infrastructure failure, site failure, disaster, whatever the case may be. So starting this failover test, essentially at that point, we're attaching a VM. We're spinning up a VM at the recovery site. We're attaching the disks, the journal disk, the replica disk to this brand new VM. We're spinning up a scratch disk to keep track of any changes. And we're able to go into these VMs and do anything that we like, basically, to be able to test and see what's exactly going on in our environment. So in this vSphere environment, we can see all the VMs that we have under protection. And then here we see testing recovery. So at any point in time, you're going to be able to see that it's a recovery test, right? It's not, someone's not going to go in there and make the mistake of thinking that this is production. You're going to be able to know what the situation is. There's no mistakes to be made here. And then during this test, we can go into any of our VMs that are in any of these VPGs. We can run tests. These will run as regular VMs. We can patch. We can make sure that everything that we do in this test environment is going to be exactly what we want to happen in production. So we could simply log in and it will load up. And once that's done, we're basically looking at, our VM, and we can see we have SQL Server here. So, tremendous capability to be able to do this in a bubble. It really presents a tremendous amount of business value. Being able to perform these tasks safely, not in production, not jeopardizing production with these actions. And then once this test is done, we simply press stop. We have the option of specifying it a success or a failure. And then we can put any notes in here to be able to perform this, to be able to have that appear on a recovery report. So this recovery report basically is available, for any test failover that you do. And I'll just go into show one of these. So basically we're going through and we're giving you all the metrics, all the data. So this is incredible for compliance to be able to prove out what your, your ability to be audited and adhere to the rules that you put in place for yourself. We have all the operation details here, who performed the action. And then we start getting into, the host, the data stores, the detailed recovery steps. So this is really, outlining what I just talked about, where we're spinning up that VM, we're attaching, we're breaking it down. It's all done automatically. So this is really a tremendous feature to have, to be able to, again, test non-disruptively, without impact to your environment. And additionally, monitoring, we're able to see our alerts, events, and tasks. Just like any other software, we do have an online portal that will be available to our Greenhouse's customers in the next release, where you'll be able to go in and see your sites, your VMs, your VPGs, and then get actionable data about your RPOs, your journal, your network. So really valuable, useful information about your environment that you may not otherwise have, that will give you a lot of insight and a lot of power. So really what Zerto is all about is empowering you to make sure that, when disaster strikes, when ransomware hits, when you have a migration to perform, all these values here, backups, Journal Failover recovery is another solution that we have where we can restore any file. So we would just go into JFLR, we would pick our mount, pick our server that we want to pull something from, we pick our checkpoint again, able to pick that granular point in time where we want to pull that file or folder from, and then we mount the disk, start the mount, and then here you can see we're spinning that up. So in addition to the incredible replication and automation we're giving you all in one package with the analytics, we're also giving you this capability to go in and basically, within a 30-day journal, 90% of backup use cases are going to be able to be solved with this issue here. Being able to just go into someone's home drive, be able to pull out whatever file or folder you would want. You can download it. It will bring it down as a compressed zip folder to your workstation, and there you go. You can push it out to wherever you want. So another extremely useful feature. Typically this is done as a white glove service with Greenhouse, but we have a lot of different value propositions here with Zerto, and I hope that I've given you a good demonstration of what those are here. At this point, I will unmount the disk, and I will hand it off to Steve, and I thank you for your attention.
Excellent.
Thanks, Derek. That was great.
Well, yeah. Good day, everyone. Stephen Dreer, Director of Solutions Architecture here at Greenhouse Data. And Wendy, I think it's a good time to basically explain to our listeners who may not necessarily be acclimated with Greenhouse Data, just to kind of talk about how disaster recovery fits into a broad portfolio of products and services. And for those that may not be spun up on Greenhouse Data, we have been at the forefront of the cloud revolution for over 10 years. Our company just celebrated its 10th year anniversary, and what that essentially means is that we've been running cloud since before cloud even had a name. And with that, we have seen countless examples of technologies that have had a dramatic impact on the operation of business, much like cloud itself. And with that is no exception as it applies to disaster recovery, and that being Zerto. And so Zerto is a key partner for Greenhouse Data. And it's important when we start looking at things such as disaster recovery, we look at IT resiliency, we look at continuity of operations, et cetera. As organizations go through this, it's important to note that disaster recovery is a team effort. It is that which you need to be able to choose the right partners that you're engaging with and the right solutions that those partners provide. And so what that typically means for Greenhouse Data clients is that we tend to look at disaster recovery in about 4 different contexts. And I'll step on these, I'll touch on them very briefly. The first one is our people. And that is that when you team up with Greenhouse Data, you're getting a wide breadth of expertise. There's a tremendous depth to our technical bench. And there's also, of course, the 24/7 support. That's something that we pride ourselves on. As it relates to process, which is another element as it applies to disaster recovery, this is when we start getting into the fully managed service realm. And so with Greenhouse Data, we are a managed service provider. We bring that element to the table for particularly organizations that may not necessarily have that depth or they don't care to, frankly. Next, of course, is compliance. We see this all over the place with our clients, being that we'll just pick a particular vertical here, looking at something, for example, in the healthcare realm or in the financial realm. Disaster recovery plays an integral part of our clients having to maintain their compliance. And Zerto does that. And what we typically see is, in the context, is I believe Nick even touched on this as well, looking at things like what could go wrong. Great example is that disaster recovery is not necessarily something that happens from a natural disaster. What you typically see is that over 60% of quote unquote disasters are inflicted on the organization either through fat fingering or poor maintenance, lack of governance, etc. And so what we see is when we start looking at leveraging tools such as Zerto, we're able to bring a lot of that to the table. A great element to kind of start off on. Before I do that, just to kind of touch on one last element, and that, of course, is cost. For any organization that has actually been on the pursuit of disaster recovery, even 5 years ago, it was basically cost prohibitive. You had to have two of everything. That was everything from capital expenditures to getting out things even such as connectivity. What do you do about staff displacement, et cetera? And so as a solution provider with Greenhouse Data, that we bring that to the table, leveraging tools like Zerto. Great customer success story. Nick did touch on this. Crypto locking and essentially ransomware. That's a big problem simply because we all have users. Everybody interacts with our systems, and that, of course, creates risks. And all it takes is one click, and next thing you know, you have an organization that can be absolutely incapacitated by a ransomware threat. And as we've seen in this demonstration, the ability to leverage Zerto's journaling to go back into that point in time right behind when that infection occurred, we're talking moments instead of what would traditionally be thought of as hours. Another success story where we see Zerto literally all the time. This one fits definitely in the compliance realm, like a regional credit union. So you have dozens of branches of individuals. Of course, you and I like money. Going into a bank and all of a sudden having systems that are unavailable, not access to money, that can be somewhat problematic. And so we have seen where in one particular case, one of our clients, it is a regional credit union, and they will actually operate 6 months out of the year in one of our facilities, and then they'll leverage Zerto to quote unquote have a failover event to be able to go into another geographic region. And so what that organization is capitalizing on is the ability to leverage tools like Zerto that make it seamless and easy. The partnership with Greenhouse Data from a managed perspective, meaning managed services, that we are able to orchestrate that transition. And that, of course, ties into compliance in that this financial institution can demonstrate basically what we've seen in the logs and the reporting that comes out of Zerto is the ability for them to show their regulators, this is what we do for disaster recovery. It's something that's been on the menu. Oh, and by the way, we actually test our plan. And so I think that that's a tremendous strength. So in a nutshell, Greenhouse Data, we specialize in helping organizations navigate and manage the complexities that often come with disaster recovery, everything from a strategic element to compliance drivers that I just mentioned. And basically what that means is that for DR, having something on a wish list is one thing, but actually being able to put that into practical application, to test that, to execute it, and to be able to document and report against that speaks greatly for those organizations. Any questions?
Thanks, Stephen. Folks, we're kind of running out of time here, but we do have one question that I want to make sure gets addressed. For Derek, you said that Zerto doesn't use snapshots. It's more of this checkpoint concept. Can you talk a little bit more about why you've chosen not to use snapshots and what the value of that is?
Sure. So essentially, we are not a backup solution in the traditional sense where you need, 25 to 50% of overhead on both production and DR. So that's an important concept in itself.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to add to that just a little bit too. Go ahead. All right. So basically, when we start looking at the gray area between disaster recovery and backups, if you will, obviously Zerto is a product that's geared more towards that operational continuity, meaning time is of the essence. What we're really trying to do is compress essentially an organization that may have some critical resources that are unavailable. Could be data, could be things like processing payments, could be a website, e-commerce, that type of thing. What we're really interested in when leveraging Zerto is cutting that time frame down to moments. And that becomes critically important because that's where most organizations actually make their money, is that if the tools are not available, then the money's not being made. Whereas when we start looking at things like backup as a service, that's where we start looking at going into retention. So things of retaining data that may not have necessarily a high likelihood of being utilized, but we want to apply the right tool with that. As mentioned earlier with the journaling of Zerto, that becomes terrific because it gives you that point in time. And it's not necessarily just something like, say, a server. It could be services. So you look at, like, say, for example, a 3-tiered application where you've got a web front end, you've got applications underneath that, and then, of course, there's a data layer as well. And so Zerto offers the ability to keep that synchronized. So you may see something with online transaction processing, things like booking tickets, etc., where there's a coordination that has to occur underneath the hood, so to speak.
Great, thank you. And then we just actually have one more question. What's the installation process like? Does this require any downtime, or can it be installed in production?
Yeah, this can absolutely be installed in production. Downtime is really not a word that's in Zerto's lexicon. So whether that's during installation, whether that's during recovery, there is not going to be any downtime. That includes upgrades.
Yeah, and so what that typically looks like from a client perspective is we basically install a replication appliance. So we're talking about virtualized environments at this point, whether that's Hyper-V or VMware, etc. And so what that looks like is we set up a replication appliance that is hypervisor aware. Any changes that occur in that environment, think like storage or writes to disk, that's what Zerto uses to replicate. And so we essentially set up a mirrored environment that could be in a public cloud infrastructure, and all of those deltas or changes that occur to that environment are replicated. But from a client perspective, what you see is typically an additional virtual appliance, and once we get replication up and going, that becomes our orchestration, and that's where the magic is.
Great. Well, thanks everyone again for joining us today. I appreciate everyone staying on, even though we went a little bit over time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either Zerto or Greenhouse Data. We would be happy to speak with you, and we'll follow up with everyone. Everyone who's on today will get a copy of this presentation within the next 24 hours. Thanks again. Bye.
Thanks, Wendy.